We are still on the topic of excellence, the H.O.V lane to excellence. And today we'll take a look at the second one, which is purity of heart. Anyone in the world who is free from malice, free from hatred, who has this purity of heart, a gentle soul, you find he doesn't have to do anything. Things just fall in place for him. And people who don't understand this principle and how it works feel, why is it that I have to struggle? Why is it that I have to work hard? Why is it? And then I meet with obstacles and roadblocks. And how is it that here is a person who doesn't seem to be doing very much, and yet everything seems to be falling in his lap? It is purity of heart. It's not that he's not doing anything. Gaining this purity of heart is a difficult task. It's an effort. You try it. You try removing one negative thought from your mind. You try removing one hatred from your bosom, and you'll see how difficult it is. So the difference is like being on the expressway to Pune, where it's smooth sailing, there are no obstacles, nothing, or trying to find your way through a crowded lane in Crawford Market. And this is what happens when you don't have this purity of heart. It's this traffic jam takes place within you, and all kinds of obstacles come in your way. So this freedom from malice, this is called soft power. This is India's most enduring quality. You go to any part of the country, you go to any citizen of this country, untouched by westernization, and you find there is even when you're touched by westernization, even when you're affected by westernization, this doesn't go. There is this warmth, there is this instant acceptance of people who are different from you. You found this recently in this Australian gentleman who came here. He had nothing going for him. He was a foreigner. He went to some village in Maharashtra. He was a foreigner. He was down and out. He had nothing going for him. And yet, the people of that village completely, totally, wholly accepted him. And he says, he's written this book, they nicknamed him Shantaram because they couldn't pronounce his name. And this is what helped him to overcome the most daunting of challenges within him, to overcome addictions, to overcome a negative criminal lifestyle and come straight, clean. This is the power. This is what helped us gain independence. If you take a look at the independence movement, what was outstanding about it is that there was no hatred against the people we were fighting. And this is a world record. Nowhere in the world are people free from hatred. And here we were fighting against people who had done injustice to us, fighting against people who were inconsiderate towards us. And yet, the battle was fought with love. This is the central theme of the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna tells Arjuna, don't hate the Kauravas. You have no business hating them. And if you hate them, you will not have the courage and conviction to stand up and fight. This is exactly what happened to Arjuna. Fight them, but without hatred. Fight them, but with love. And this is the most difficult concept to understand and live is a far cry. So, the principle is hate the sin, but not the sinner. Emotion is a very powerful motivator. At the same time in history, there were two world leaders, powerful people, who leveraged a different kind of emotion. One was Gandhiji, who operated on a positive emotion, and Hitler, who worked with a totally negative emotion, hatred. What is interesting? See, the results show for you to see. And then you need to look within and say, see how it works within us. When you entertain hatred, one negative thought, it's like a slow poison. It kills you. Never mind what it does to the other person. It may or may not do harm to the other person, but it sure as hell kills you. And so, like a doctor said recently, he says, I love myself too much to do things that I think are wrong. If you are your own benefactor, you will resist from hatred because you know that it's a slow poison. And once it gets into your system, it finishes you off. Positive emotion, on the other hand, love, liberates you. It liberates you. You're able to carry others along with you and liberate them also. So it does enormous good to you, and it spreads this welfare, this goodness to all around. So Vedanta is often accused of being dry of emotion, insipid. In fact, it's not true. Vedanta just helps to convert the emotion from a negative one, selfish one, to an unselfish one. From a weakness to a strength, and from a liability to an asset. So let's see what the difference is. First of all, what happens when you develop love within you? First thing that happens is you're able to overcome your own weaknesses. Yesterday we took a father and son example. Today we're taking another father and son example. A father who has many things. See, all fathers have all things wrong with, not all, weaknesses, have faults. We all have weaknesses and faults. But one of the things that helps you to overcome your weakness is if you have an emotional anchor. Not necessarily father, mother, it could be anyone, sibling. But when there was a father who had tremendous weaknesses, his life was like he was in a passenger in a car that was going at high speed with no driver. And from that, he jumped into the driver's seat. He took control of his life. He knew what was happening. And all this happened because he had this emotional anchorage. He was totally, completely devoted to his own son. And this is what helped him to make this change. From a person who was a loser, he became a winner. Winner from his own standpoint. And this is the capacity that we all have. This is something that modern life, corporate executives particularly, or people in government, etc., at your work situations, we don't use this. We don't use the power of emotion, the power of just a feeling of oneness with people. When you have that, not only are you able to overcome your own weakness, you're able to obtain success, because then when you have this emotional motivation and anchorage, whatever you do, you come up with superlative performance. Every little action becomes perfect. Because you're doing it not for yourself. You're not doing it because you want a return for yourself. You're doing it as an offering to someone that you love, someone you're devoted to, some entity that you are pouring out your emotions to. And when this shifts to a spiritual one, when you become devoted to God, my God, where whatever comes out of you becomes perfect. This also, incidentally, leads to clarity of thought. See, the three are interlinked. Either you have sincerity of action, or when you have sincerity of action, the other two follow suit. When you have purity of heart, you automatically become sincere in your actions. You develop this clarity of thought. You may not be an intellectual genius, but you know exactly what is right and what is wrong. You are then, like this father was capable of giving advice to people who were far more intelligent than him. And yet all of them came to him for advice because they knew his judgment was absolutely clear. This again is well within our capability. Every single human being has this capacity to emote, to feel, to be loyal and true to someone, anyone. It doesn't matter who the person is. It doesn't matter what the person's good points or what the person's faults are. You don't need to look for perfection. See, all of us turn around and say, oh, how can I love this person? He's got so many bad qualities. Do you not love yourself? Are you trying to say that you are free from faults? Then how is it possible? So if it's possible with yourself, it's possible with everyone. And the magic of love is the moment you feel this oneness, the moment you feel affection for someone, you just don't, you see the faults, but you zero in, you focus on the wonderful qualities that the person has, and the entire relationship changes. A relationship that is doomed to destruction. A relationship that nobody backs and says, oh, sooner or later this is going to crack up, becomes one of the most wonderful, successful relationships in the world, because one person has the capacity to reach out unconditionally. In a relationship, if you take a look at, oh, what is the other person doing for me, then it ceases to be love. It's business. It becomes love only when you set aside all expectations and say, my business is simply to reach out to the person. What the person does about it is not my concern. But eventually, nobody in the world can withstand the power of love, so the return has to come. And you don't have to even express it. You don't have to send cards, you don't have to send emails, you don't have to send letters, you don't have to do anything except just feel. It gets across. It gets across even to dogs. What are you talking about human beings? I had this experience recently. Someone invited us to lunch. The lady had invited quite a few people. I walked in, and there was this huge dog sprawled across on the floor. And her first question to me was, are you afraid of dogs? I said, no. The dog didn't even move. He opened one eye, looked at me, and went back to sleep. 5 minutes after me, 2 others walked in. And suddenly this dog came alive, started barking. And I was wondering, I said, what's the difference? Wow, why is this difference in reaction? And then I understood, one of those 2 ladies was afraid of dogs. So this is it. When you reach out every morning, when you go out into the world with love, it's like the dog who just opens one eye and goes back to sleep. But when you reach out, you go around your daily business with a sense of separateness, with a sense of otherness, with a sense of hatred, then you evoke the same kind of response from the other person. Then the whole world barks at you. And then you say, why me? Why me? Because you are vulnerable. The world will bark at a person who is afraid, who feels a sense of separateness. The fear comes because of a sense of separateness. The moment you feel one, all fear vanishes. And the world doesn't challenge you anymore. So this is the thing with love. Now, you become happy. Any person who has love for another is happy. And most importantly, desires drop. You are able to completely set aside your interests, set aside your desires, and align yourself with the other person's interests, the other person's desires, and before you know it, your personality has changed, your desires have dropped. And this, you become a simple person. I don't know whether you've seen people with its simplicity. There is no craving within them, there is no reaching out for the world, there is no dependence, there is no aspiring for this, that and the other, all of which causes mental agitations. So a person who's simple, when I say simple, he doesn't have that many desires. He may have a lot of objects of the world. You see the difference? Simple person doesn't necessarily mean that he's poverty stricken. Unfortunately, today's concept of spirituality and religion is that the common man believes that a religious person, a spiritual person, must necessarily be poverty stricken. That's not true. In fact, a spiritual person has so much power that he can command the wealth of the world. There may be some people who choose not to have it. See, if you don't have value for it, why will you have it? It's like as adults, you have no value for toys. Why will you surround yourself with toys? Now, there are 3 kinds of living beings in the world: plant, animal, human. If you look at a plant, the plant has apparently no emotions, maybe a few emotions, but nowhere near the state of animals or humans. When it comes to animals, you find all animals have enormous emotions. Horses, dogs of course. Horses have emotions. Cows have emotions. I've seen in Delhi where a calf was separated from the cow. The cow actually had tears because of the cow was separated from the calf, and the calf was not allowed to drink milk. So all animals have emotions. But the nature of the animal is such that it is wholly dependent because it is affected by that emotion. And it doesn't have the capacity to stand apart from the emotion, it has to act on that emotion. This is what makes it completely dependent. Now when you come to the human being, you find that the human being has far greater emotion than any animal, far subtler emotion. But the human being has one extraordinary capability which makes him independent of the world. And that is, number 1, the human being has the capacity to act on the discrimination of the intellect. However much emotion you have, however deep the emotion, every one of us has the capacity to act on the same discrimination of the intellect and not just allow the emotion to manifest. And secondly, we have the capacity not to be affected by that emotion. And this is put brilliantly by Oliver Goldsmith when he describes the village preacher, a spiritual person. He says, this village preacher, how does he relate with the common people in the village? He says, to them, his heart, his love, his griefs were given. He freely transacted emotionally with them. But all his serious thoughts had rest in heaven. His intellect was totally focused on the spiritual, on the spirit. And then he gives an example of a mountain as some tall cliff that lifts its awful form and midway leaves the storm. So if you look at a mountain, if you see even a picture of a mountain, you find that the mountain lifts from the vale and midway leaves the storm. Though round its breast the rolling clouds are spread, eternal sunshine settles on its head. So the peak is always in contact with the sun above. The clouds are at heart level. And then when he sees the mountain, he compares it with the village preacher. He says, all the emotions, the play of emotions go round at your heart level. Your head should always be clear and unclouded. With many of us, it's the other way around. The head is completely clouded and the heart is totally devoid of emotion. So we are constantly alternating between the plant state and the animal state. If at all your intellect is free and clear in its thinking, you have no emotion. And whenever you have emotion, the intellect is clouded. So what it means is we're not living up to the dignity of a human being where we have the capacity